A database system becomes much more useful when it has a variety of different views of the data available. But the Layouts menu isn't always the most convenient or the easiest way for users to find their way around. In lots of cases, it may be better to add on-screen navigation. In the case of the two different authors' layouts in our working file, let's see what it takes to create some custom user navigation tools to quickly navigate from one layout to the other and back. Back in Layout mode, I'm going to select FileMaker's Button tool from the status toolbar so I can use it to add a graphical control object to the layout. Again, the techniques I'll be using here are discussed more fully in later lessons, but for now I just want to demonstrate the principle. First of all, I'll drag a small rectangle in the header area of the layout, and as soon as I release the mouse button, FileMaker's Button Setup dialog appears. A little way down the list of commands at the left of the Button Setup dialog, I can select the Go to Layout command. And with the command selected, then in the Options panel at the top right of the dialog, I can specify the layout that will be the target of the command. In this case, I'll choose the Author's Listing layout and click OK to dismiss the Button Setup dialog. Next, I'm prompted to enter some text to provide a label for the button. I'll simply type List. And when I press the Enter key, the button is selected, ready for me to position it or otherwise format it. So I'll change the font of the button to Verdana to match the rest of the layout. And I'll also change the font size to 9 point. Make it bold and perhaps select a grey colour. I'll also use the arrow keys on the keyboard to nudge the button up a little way. And using the View Inspector command, I'll bring up the inspector so that I can use the alignment tools in the position panel of the inspector to align the button and the rectangle in the body area so that their right sides correspond. Now let's take a look at this in Browse mode. I'll click on the button, and sure enough, it takes us to the list layout. But of course, at this point, I have to use the Layout menu to return to the author's layout. Now let me make the buttons work in both directions. Back into Layout mode, I'm going to select the button, make a copy of it, and then paste the copy onto the layout. I'll now drag the copy over to the left. I'll select the Text tool and change the label on this copy of the button to say Form. I'll need to enlarge the button just a little so that the label fits. Shrink it vertically again so that it matches the height of the original list button. And I'll double click on the button to bring up the Button Setup dialog so that I can specify the current layout as the target for this copy of the button. So I'll select the author's layout, click OK, and then dismiss the Button Setup dialog. Next, I want to make the list button the same width. So with both buttons selected, I'll use the Resize to Largest Width option in the Arrange and Align panel of the Position tab of the inspector. Both buttons are now the same width. While I'm working, I'll visit the Appearance tab of the inspector and change the look of the buttons slightly by removing the corner radius from the upper left and lower left corners of the list button. Then I'll do the opposite by removing the corner radius from the upper right and lower right of the Form button. And now I'll use the arrow keys on the keyboard to nudge the buttons a little closer together. Back on the Position tab, I can see that the right position of the list button is 759 points. And that's 1 point more than 758, which is the right position of the panel in the body area. So I'll select both buttons and move them a pixel to the left. And while I'm at it, I'll see if I can make them a little bit less high. Now, the Form button represents the current layout, so let me change the text color to a highlight color to indicate that that represents the current layout. Now I'll select both buttons and copy them. And before I leave this layout, I'll check the position. These buttons are 50 points from the top, and the Form button is 667 points from the left of the layout. On the author's listing layout, I'll paste the buttons. Now I want to position the form button so it will be in the same relative position on this list layout. Using the arrow keys, I'll move it across to the corresponding position. The corresponding position will actually be 664 points from the left of the list layout, because FileMaker adds a 3-pixel band at the left of the layout when it's a list layout. Now I'll move the list button so that it's lined up in the same position relative to the form button. Now let's change the formatting so that the form button has the grey text and the list button has the coloured text to represent a highlight. Now let's look at this in browse mode and see how it works. We have the form button and the list button to navigate between the two layouts with a click. So now, with a couple of navigation buttons positioned on each of the author's layouts, it's quite a lot easier to navigate. Just a couple of mouse clicks takes me back and forth between the two different views of the author's data in this copy of the work file.